Hello. Good evening. If you're from this part of the world, good morning. Wherever else you are from, good day. We always have guests from all over the world on our show. And as you know, Stay Kind is a weekly live show. And our only goal is to bring positivity and kindness through all corners of the earth. And we invite really cool people to come on this show and share with us their journey and share with us the kindness that they've seen and what they are working on right now. And for this week, I have my co-host Michael Teo. How you doing, Mike?
Hello, Azib. Hello, everybody. I am doing well, Azib. How are you doing?
I'm great, looking good there, and we have matching shirts on.
There you
Wonderful.
go. Same color. We're on the same theme. And Azib, I need to say this, right? So before we went on air, I had a chance to speak to Azib. And again, Azib's going to hate me by saying this, but, there's a moral to the story here. So Azib is still in his work uniform. He has worn it for the last 16 hours, but that shows how committed he is. He came
Uh,
back from work. He knew that he had to do this show passionately. So, taking a shower, having dinner, apparently it's secondary to him. This show is more important. So, thank you again Azib, for bringing positivity to all of us. And it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Mike. I have to correct you. Dinner is more important. I had dinner. Shower is optional. So I'll take a shower right after this.
All right.
Well, we have a fantastic guest with us today, Mike.
Excellent. Yes, we do.
Yes, Rachel Druckenmiller, all the way from the United States. And without further ado, wait, if any of you are tuning in right now, and typically we have a bunch of people from all over. I haven't checked my LinkedIn stream yet. We are streaming directly to my feed, to Mike's feed, to Rachel's feed, to Mike's YouTube, to my YouTube. My goodness, we are streaming all over the place today. And if you are tuning in right now, I need you to comment in the comment sections in the chat and tell me where you're coming from. We have people already on board.
Azro.
Rachel has commented, and we have people from all over. So tell me where you're tuning in from, guys, and we're happy to have you on the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us bring on the one, the only Rachel Druckenmiller. Hey, Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
We are doing
Such
fantastic.
a
You're looking
soothing
great.
voice. There you go. I know we're in for a treat.
Yes, we are. So
Well,
it's early morning there. Where are you exactly, Rachel?
I'm on the East Coast of the United States in Baltimore, Maryland. So about an hour from
Nice.
Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Cool.
Fantastic.
I actually have a sister near Washington. She may be in Maryland. I don't know. I haven't been visiting. I haven't visited since she moved there like 5 years ago. But we've had several guests from the East Coast. We have Andrea Koppel on the show recently. And so we welcome you from Maryland and wherever you are tuning in from. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to hear where you're from. Cynthia here from Ohio in the
Very
Midwest.
nice.
We have people from Taiping. So let's just quickly acknowledge people who are on the chat today. Aizudin here is from Tanjung. Welcome, Aizudin. We have
Ooh,
Theresa.
Teresa.
Hey,
Close to
Theresa.
me, Fells Point. That's in Baltimore.
That's that's close to you.
Yeah.
There's somebody from Bangladesh. We can't really see his handle. He must have a privacy thing on his handle. So, anyway, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this show, Stay Kind, and with our guest today, Rachel Druckenmiller. I hope I pronounced that right,
Oh, you
Rachel.
nailed it. Great job. Yeah.
Got it.
Thanks. So, Mike and I are gonna be asking you a bunch of questions, and we also welcome questions from the crowd. So, whoever's tuning in right now, we welcome all of your views. Rosilawati from Ampang, Selangor, Malaysia, welcome. Any questions, any views, any thoughts, anything you want us to talk about, we'll be happy to address you there. So, Rachel, maybe to start off, you'd just like to tell us and the audience what you do and what you're currently busy with.
Yeah. I'd say like what I do, I'm a hope dealer. So
Nice.
I go into organizations and associations and I work with their leaders and teams and I help them to be more resilient, to be more connected, to be more engaged, and to be more compassionate. And I do that through leadership trainings, keynotes, workshops, interactive experiences. And I've been doing that for the past 18 months, about 90% virtual, and been able to work with, more people than I ever thought possible all over the world. And it's been so life-giving. So I'm there to really ignite and awaken and transform something in people that helps them to live and work, better, more energized, more fulfilled.
Fantastic. And how did you get there? How did you end up starting Unmuted and becoming this ignition for organizations and associations?
Well, I mean, it's been kind of a long journey. Part of it starts with the fact that my parents are both entrepreneurs. So I grew up in an environment where I saw people kind of make up what they did. And I thought that that was normal, which most people, that's not normal. Most people, it's like you have a clear line of sight of somebody tells you what to do and you go through this career path and it's this many years. And welcome, Glenn. Jim Glenn's here. And so I had that as a vision from a very young age. My dad would listen to Tony Robbins tapes and, watched Oprah. And so I was exposed to a world full of possibility from the time I was a teenager. Nice. And, I started as an intern at a benefits consulting firm thinking to myself, there's no way I'm going to do anything other than just intern here. And then turns out I was there for 13 years. Full time. And I was very entrepreneurial. I think we don't talk about entrepreneurship enough, which is basically that, we have the opportunity to sort of act like an entrepreneur with the safety of working for somebody else with a consistent paycheck. So I basically made up my job. I said, well, I'm interested in health and human behavior. And so in 2007, I said, I'm going to be a wellness coordinator. I don't know what that person does, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make it up. And I did. And I went back to school. I studied psychology at undergrad and health science in my graduate degree. And then I just fell in love with the world of corporate wellness. And over the next, 13 years, I figured out how to stand out as a voice who is saying something different than what a lot of other people were saying in corporate wellness, which is like, make sure you drink your water and eat your broccoli. And I believe in eating broccoli and drinking water, but I found through my own health journey, my own health experiences, that there had to be more to well-being than just like hitting people over the head for not, having the right diet or exercising. And, through my own journey of burnout 5 years ago, I realized just how important social, emotional, mental health was, to my own experience. And then that was a catalyst for me to wake up from a dream that I'd been drowning. Actually, I had a dream I was drowning, and that was the catalyst to the burnout, which was the catalyst to the awakening. And then 2019, I made the decision. I said, you know what? I've been speaking for years as part of my job. And I was like, this is the thing I want to do all the time. I don't want to do any of the other stuff. I just want to speak and train all the time. And, with enough reps and enough, kind of feedback from people that were hearing me speak and saying nice things, I thought, well, maybe I can give this a shot. So I left in the fall of 2019 and, pandemic hit 7 months later and I had to reinvent the entire business at that point. And, but I'm so glad, no regrets. So glad I did it.
Wow. I'm so glad you said you made it up as you went along, which was fantastic. And I guess you made up along the way a lot of what you do, Mike. And Mike has been in the training business for how long now? When did Thriving Talent start?
Azib, the funny thing is when I'm sitting here listening to what Rachel has been sharing with us, she gave me goosebumps in a good way, because I could map my journey like Rachel. So just to share with you, Rachel, I did an apprenticeship as well with 2 leading management consulting firms when I was doing my undergraduate years in New Zealand. And then I had that same feeling like you. Like I was there, I was working with all these big clients as an apprentice. The senior partners would mentor me. But then I asked myself, is this really a job that I want to do for life? And I find that I love to speak. I mean, that was how I met Azim as well. I met him when he was a CEO of a growing government agency that promoted innovation. And I was invited to talk about innovation to the youth at that time. This was way back in 2010 to 2011, 2012. And then that was when I really discovered that passion. And then I pursued it. I started Thriving Talents. We started designing learning solutions, engagements for corporations. So I'm going to say this first, Rachel. I think we need to talk because there's obviously going to be opportunities that we could work together. I love your energy. So I must say, yeah, it's amazing being in your presence. And thank you again, Azib, for making this happen. Azib, if I may, I would like to start off with the first question that I have for Rachel. Rachel, you mentioned big words like ignite, transform something in people so that they could be better, so that they could be more resilient, engaged, happier with their work. And I know that you are one of the more sought after speakers in corporate America and also internationally. I mean, Azib told me that you have done 240 events, keynote address, speaking engagements. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, in this lockdowns alone, right? 240, that's amazing, right? That's like
250, I don't know. Yeah, something upwards of 250 something. Yeah, since
Rachel,
March.
that was 250. So Rachel, my question is, I mean, you shared with us that you ignite and transform something in people to make them better. In all your keynotes, what is that one message that you believe really resonated with most of the people that you have spoken to? What would that one message be?
I think it's a feeling that I create in people. And the feeling that I think I create is a feeling of validation. So of being seen. So for instance, when the pandemic started and everyone was in freak out mode, panic, right? Like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What's happening? What's happening? I had people come to me, former client, clients I've worked with before, associations I worked with before, in the human resources space. And they said, we need something to like lift people up right now. So the fact that I was viewed as somebody who uplifted people was why I was brought in. But then why I was, I think, brought back is because I think people really felt like I got them. So as somebody who has burned out before, as someone who's been really scared, as somebody who's had to navigate significant change, like launching a business in the midst of a pandemic, losing 80% of it in a matter of 2 weeks and having to completely resurrect it as the primary breadwinner of my family. And then 6 weeks later, getting hit by a pickup truck and fracturing my back. Like, I knew a thing or two about resilience, not from reading it in a book, but from living it in my life. And so I'm able to tell compelling stories because I've lived it. And so I know what it feels like to feel discouraged and frustrated and to be grieving and to be able to name it. And so what I find that I'm often able to do is to give language to things that are universal human experiences that people have never really felt understood in or felt validated by. And I'm able to give it language. I'm able to put a voice to it. I'm able to tell stories around it. And I have all the time people sending me messages after talk saying, I felt like you were talking directly to me. I felt like I was in a conversation with a friend. Are you a therapist? I'm not a therapist. I see a therapist. That's the other part of my growth journey is I see a therapist every week. And so, I do a lot of my own, I continue to do a lot of my own work, which allows me to be effective with other people because I'm doing so much of my own work that I'm getting insight constantly that I can then share with other people. So I'd say it's just, I'm bringing this honesty. I'm bringing a refreshing honesty that validates people's experience. And I think that is the thing that that draws people to me. I think that's one of the things.
I mean, I'm drawn to you now. I'm drawn to you now. It's amazing, just to share before I pass it back to Azib right here. So your story, I'll tell you my version. So last year, before the pandemic, I got into an accident. I dislocated my left knee for the second time. I was told by the doctors that my left knee, because it came out again for a second time. The last time was when I was 15. Now when it happened to me last year, I was 33 years old. So when the doctor said it came out again for a second time, even though it has had a prolonged time of healing, meaning that I would not be able to walk as strongly as before. So the accident hit me. I lost 70% of my business because of the lockdowns that we had right here. I had to let go of my team previously because we were all just in panic mode. And then to recover from that, rebuilding my business, doing regimen exercises to strengthen my left leg so that my left knee won't come out again. So I could really empathize with what you have shared right here. So oftentimes I also find myself sharing stories about resilience, about having the mental toughness. So thank you, Rachel. Indeed, you have provided validation for my experiences. There you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Back to
Thank
you,
Yeah.
Azim.
Yeah, I think what I enjoyed most about what you were just sharing about your journey, Rachel, was the authenticity of it all. You know, we could really tell that this is you. This is Rachel,
Mhm.
and she's
Yeah.
this crazy, energetic lady. And even though you're going through all of this, even though you're going through therapy, and even though you've had that accident, and things, life goes on, right? You have to figure out a
Mhm.
way on how to move on. And one of the words that you used in your first when you first spoke was about resilience. So my
Yeah.
question to you is that a big thing? Is that the main thing of what you talk about with your clients in the companies and the associations that you speak to? Is that something that they really need?
It's the main thing I've been asked to speak about lately, because people are struggling with it. And I think other thing that I do with that is not just say like, hey, just get back up when you get knocked down and think about what are the 3 things you're grateful for and move on. Like gratitude is important. I don't want to diminish it. Like it's an important part of my life. But I think we have to name the fact that there's other things going on beneath that. Like there's a certain degree of acceptance that has to happen with resilience, and a lot of people have been resisting reality. It doesn't mean you like it. There's a lot of things going on in the world that we may not like, but the amount of resistance, the amount of emotional resistance we have and the mental resistance that we have to things that we don't like takes up a tremendous amount of energy that prevents us from being able to move forward. And so what I find is that, I can speak to this again in a real way of I know what it's like to have to accept something. Like I remember in May of 2020, after I had this accident, and thank you, Cynthia. After I had this accident, and I was standing in my living room with my back brace on, and I was looking outside and I was watching somebody run by my house. And it was a beautiful day. It was 70 degrees. And I just started crying. And I just went to my husband and I asked him to kind of like hug and hold me because I was so sad. I was so sad that this was my reality, that at a time where the only outlet we had, frankly, was to get outside and move, that was now gone. And I had to accept that. I did not like it. I was really, really upset about it, but being mad at the fact that this was happening in my life was not going to make it any better. I let myself be sad. I let myself be frustrated. I had moments when I was angry. I let myself feel all of that. And to your point, I also made the decision to share those moments, to not wait until I was healed before I started sharing with people. I think that's another thing that draws people in is I share my journey along the way when I'm like not 100%. And so then when I am 100% or whatever, 110% or celebrating something, people are like, wow, like I've seen the journey that you've gone through. And this celebration is magnified and amplified because I've seen and heard you when you were really struggling and like barely able to like turn on a camera and say anything to anybody without crying, And so I think that is so important right now, that acceptance for people and that ability to just let go. Like, letting go of the things we can't control, letting go of the idea of going back to normal, not happening, letting go of judgment of ourselves and other people, and then making the conscious decision to receive and to let in and to really take in all the good things that are happening around us and sitting with those a little bit longer and letting those refill the tank that's been drained out from so many of us. So, I think the way that I approach that and giving people practical ways to do that and inviting them to share their own stories with each other of, how they've gone through difficult things themselves. So it's not just my story. I'm just the person who's positioning the conversation, and then I invite their stories. And so I think that collectively is what one of the things people really need right now is resilience. And then, my company's called Unmuted. So I talk about helping people to unmute themselves and, advocate for themselves at work. And a lot of the times with women leadership or emerging leaders. But, I work with Friday, I'm going down to an organization, a global company of 65,000 employees, and I'm going to spend the keynote with their 12-person leadership team talking about Ted Lasso's. I love the show Ted Lasso. So I'm doing a show about about lessons on leadership from him that I just made up. So again, making stuff up. It's what I do. I get paid to make stuff up. It's so fun.
Wonderful. Now, before we go further, Michael, what you're saying really resonated to me in terms of let's let other people share their stories as well. So I'm going to invite Renee here, who is so brave, just like you
Mhm.
were, to share
Well done, Renee.
issues and shares problems. And
Yeah.
Oh,
Renee is recovering. Yep. And
yeah.
so, but
I'm happy
she's
to respond.
really, I mean, she's taking it up, Renee. I follow your posts, and you're posting every day right now about your journey and the joys and the ups and downs that you're
Amazing.
going through as well. And it is amazing. So
Yeah. Yeah. I have
we
a
can't see
comment.
the whole thing. Let me see.
I see it
She's
on the side.
saying,
She's living with
yeah,
metastatic breast cancer. Never felt that I need to talk to a therapist more recently, perhaps because I'm talking more about metastatic breast cancer on social media. It does somehow. Oh, there you go. It does somehow affect me more. When should someone like me seek help in the form of therapy, if at all? I'm happy to respond to that if you'd like.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
Renee, first of all, as has been said already, you are tremendously brave, and sending you healing and comfort and peace. And therapy, here's the thing that may be really particularly helpful with something like that. A diagnosis like that can be really traumatic. I can imagine. I've not been there, but I can imagine. And so I see a specific kind of therapist. There may be specific therapists that work with breast cancer patients, which may be one, first of all, to seek that out. That may be a first go. A second, maybe to seek out a therapist who's trained in a therapist that's called somatic or somatic experiencing, SOMA, SOMATIC. So somatic therapists are trained not only in helping you navigate things from a mental and emotional health perspective, but they're also very attuned to noticing the body, and that the body, there's a really great book called The Body Keeps the Score. One of my favorites, I recommend it to every human. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and really powerful book. And I've found, as somebody who's seen a somatic therapist from the PTSD from my accident for a year now, I've seen her for a year. There's an ability that they have to really get to things that you don't even know are there. Because again, trauma gets stored in the body, it gets stored in our tissues. And there's a power to working with somebody who understands how to navigate someone through that journey. So that may be something. First, I would say, look at people that are specifically trained to support people that have breast cancer. I would imagine that is a focus area of certain therapists. But also I found that a somatic or an experiential, so there's something called experiential therapy, is another way to go. And it's been, I mean, absolutely life changing for me, to have that kind of support from someone. I've grown a tremendous amount and healed a tremendous amount from working with somebody with that kind of background. So Renee, I hope that's helpful. Feel free to private message me if you want any other guidance on that.
Wow, that's so
Amazing.
kind of you to share that and offer that. So Renee, please do keep in touch.
I could
And
feel the love, as if I could feel the
yeah,
love
that's
coming
right.
from Rachel.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
So we were just talking about before the show, Mike, with Rachel and you and I, about how LinkedIn is the three of us, our favorite, our go-to place to hang
Yep.
out. And one of the things that I found is because of this kindness and nurturing that I've discovered on LinkedIn, which is sometimes alien and non-existent in other social media. So what was your experience, Rachel, on spending time on LinkedIn?
Well, I joined LinkedIn in 2006 when I graduated from college. I joined LinkedIn. There wasn't a whole lot happening on LinkedIn 15 years ago. And then I remember I started publishing. I published my first article in 2015. And because I loved writing, and I was like, well, let me start sharing things on here. And, I would periodically, I would connect every time I met somebody. I would go on LinkedIn and I would connect with them on LinkedIn if they were on there. Cause like not everyone, like now everyone's on LinkedIn, but like at that point, not everyone necessarily was going to be on there. And so I like very, very gradually, like even before I left my former employer, had started to build up a community on there, not with any great degree of consistency. I mean, I wouldn't have like much interaction at all on just regular posts I'd put up. I also didn't feel like I could put up really personal things because it was like I was working for somebody else. And, I felt like I always sort of had to make sure certain things that I shared were like, aligned with that. And then once I left, I was like, I'm going to post whatever I want. And I did. And I started sharing like from a much more authentic place. And then people were really responsive to it. And then, really over the past year in particular, since the pandemic, I've just really, I put my singing out there, like when the pandemic hit, I was like, I got to do something doing and, uplift people. So I think the first video I posted singing was This Little Light of Mine. And I think it had, at that time, this is the most I'd ever had anybody look at much of anything. I think I had like 5,000 views or something. And I was like, oh, I guess people like listening to me sing This Little Light of Mine. I just pressed record and put it, I didn't like edit it. There weren't like captions or fancy things. I just like recorded on my phone and put it up there. And I was like, oh, I guess maybe I could sing more on here. And people would like that. For me, that was my only outlet. Singing was like the only outlet I had with my back injury. I couldn't bend, lift, or twist. I couldn't really do a whole lot physically. And so I had to connect to another source of joy. And for me, a source of joy that's been there from the time I was a very, very little girl that I did not share publicly for a very long time was singing. So, yeah, LinkedIn's awesome.
Wow. Cool.
I have a question for you, Rachel, if I may.
Oh.
Rachel, you help companies to energize their employees or to make them more resilient. There are people who said that resiliency is inborn and it cannot be trained. But obviously, you wouldn't agree with that because you are the proven example of someone that companies hire to mold their people to be more resilient. So my question for you is, Rachel, from your experience, how do you do that? If you could walk us through step by step, because whatever you have done for the companies, for all of you that is tuning in right now, you could potentially emulate in your company as well. So again, Rachel, could you please enlighten us step by step? How do you do it? How do you build resiliency? Is a talk sufficient? Is a story sufficient? How do you do that?
It's a process like anything. I mean, I think another thing that people appreciate me for is that I'm non-prescriptive. So I generally don't say like, here are the 3 things you must do to be this. I like, look, here's an offering. Like, here's the platter. Here's the buffet. Here's the buffet of things you could try. Pick what works for you. Like that's generally my stance on pretty much everything, because I think a lot of times when we fall into the trap of like giving advice, we're coming from a place of like, we know better than other people. And I don't think I know better than other people. I just think I might have thought about this a lot more and reflected on my own experience and done a lot more work in this space and read up on it than other people. But I don't, so I think to your question, resilience absolutely is a capacity that can be developed. It's a capacity that can be developed, a muscle that can be strengthened. If people don't have, and I'll talk more about that in a second. If people don't necessarily have, a strong sense of resilience inherently, they can still benefit from something called post-traumatic growth. And post-traumatic growth is essentially the capacity to, in the midst of adversity, connect to some beneficial form of growth in the form of a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. Think about anyone listening right now, right? The sense of how our sense of meaning and life, our sense of spirituality was enhanced in the midst of the pandemic, our appreciation for life, our compassion for others, connection to our personal strengths, our sense of new possibilities that were emerging in the world. All of these things are forms of growth that even if we haven't necessarily built up the muscle of resilience, we can still benefit from post-traumatic growth. So I want to distinguish those two. When it comes to resilience, when it comes to building resilience, one of the things I'll mention starting off is one of the things I talked about a little while ago, which is the first part of that's acceptance, right? That how do we focus on, intentionally like accepting what is. That's like step one. If we're sitting there like, oh, digging our heels and I'm so mad that this is happening, I wish this wasn't okay. Like, and what energy do you now have to solve your problems, right? So I think the acceptance piece is really, really important, and that takes time, and the timeline for acceptance varies by person. So acceptance is a big part of it. I think another element to being resilient is social support. One of the most important elements of being resilient is social support. So we don't have the strength to stand on our own, like in my case, literally. We have to lean on other people. And so at a time of such social isolation and disconnection, it's more important than ever that we are intentional. And I just posted a post on LinkedIn about this yesterday morning that seems to be resonating with people, about the importance of asking for help. That so often we diminish our own needs. We say, well, so-and-so has it worse than me, or I don't want to be a burden, or, I've already asked for help, or gosh, if people really knew I was struggling with this, then what would they think of me? And so then we don't ask for help, and then we stay more and more in isolation. And so I think, it's like, I don't know how we're resilient if we're just relying on our own strength to get through. I don't know. As somebody who has tried to do that, did not work.
Yeah.
Did not work. So, social support and really a sense of agency, of reminding yourself. I encourage people, think of a time in the past where you went through a really difficult situation and you weren't really sure how you were going to make it through. And you did. Like, for me, I think back to when I burned out and got mono 5 years ago from just driving myself into the ground, working too hard. And that I lost my voice during that time. I was sleeping 12 hours a night and not feeling rested for months. I was so sick. I had something called Epstein-Barr virus. I was so sick. And, going through that experience gave me a lesson in the importance of asking for help, letting people in when we're struggling, and receiving help. And so then when I got to this situation 4 years later, with, getting hit by a truck and fracturing my back, I had learned a lesson previously that I can get through. I can do hard things. I can get through hard things. I'm capable of seeking out. I have a strong sense of agency, or the ability to, to impact my future. I can seek out the healers and support that I need. I demonstrated that to myself. So when I got to this, I'm like, okay, this is a different thing, but it's a similar scenario.
Right.
So I think that sense of acceptance, that sense of, support, and that sense of reminding ourselves of when we've gotten through hard things in the past, I think, all of those, and somebody's question, Benjamin's question about, switching from being half empty to half full.
Yeah.
I think part of that is, in the midst of the difficult situations, to take a moment to take in the good, to think about, when I was in the trauma room in that, at the hospital, not waiting for my prognosis, I was singing songs. I was singing like Hakuna Matata I needed something to distract myself. I didn't have a phone and I had no one to talk to because it was COVID. My husband couldn't be there. I was alone at the hospital for like 9 hours. And so I started singing songs, and I was thinking to myself, there's something here about rising up when we get knocked down. I'm going to use it. Like, I thought in that moment, there is something here. I have not been given this platform. I do not do this job to not be able to use the story. Like, I am sure as heck not going to waste it.
Yes.
And, and I'll share this with you, Benjamin, and for anyone else that it may help. And then I'll pause.
No, go ahead.
But I had started a practice of kind of keeping track of bright spots in my life when the pandemic started, because I needed something to encourage me, because I was very discouraged when event after event got canceled and postponed, and that was my only source of income. I was having some moments of freaking out, and so every day I did this for 35 some days leading up to the accident. And when the accident happened, I was like, I don't have the energy to do anything right now. I would track in my journal. I would number it from 1 to 10, and I would track what were 10 good things or moments of joy, or glimmers of hope that I saw that day, or something good that happened. And so because I knew that I was going to be responsible to myself for tracking that at the end of the day, throughout the day, I was more aware when those things happened. So when something good happened, I was like, ooh, that's something you can put in your journal tonight.
Nice.
And some days I got to the end of the day and I would start writing and I could get to 2 and I'd be like, today was not a good day. How am I going to find 8 more? And I like made the discipline. I made myself sit there until I could fill up the list. And so we can retrain. We have the capacity to retrain our brain to be noticing and mindful of the things that are good that are happening. And this is not to diminish. It's a both and. It's I can feel the pain and the sadness and the frustration and the anger that I'm feeling. And I can also see the goodness that's around me. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
That's
So
amazing.
that,
That's amazing.
yeah,
So much
that's
application of that. Amazing.
so much, so many gems. So one of the things you mentioned was mindfulness, and because you work a lot in wellness, and particularly in corporate wellness, that has taken a huge turn, hasn't it? I mean, recently it's become a buzzword, and all companies want to kind of jump onto the bandwagon and
Yeah.
provide wellness services for their employees. So, have you seen real change, or is it really lip service?
I mean, for most organizations, I think their intentions are good, but I think most companies don't really understand how important their employees' well-being is to their performance and their retention and their engagement. I don't think they realize it. When you don't feel good, when you don't feel connected, when you feel tired, when you don't feel energized, when you don't feel appreciated, when you're struggling with things that are weighing you down in some way, it's really hard to like be at 100% at work, like nearly impossible. And I think the good thing that's happening is more organizations are realizing this is not a divide of like you deal with that stuff at home and then you come in here and perform. People are, I think, realizing now more than ever as we're in people's homes, right? As we're like working remotely and seeing people's chaos in some cases behind them, that we cannot separate these things. There are not two separate people that work at your company. There is one person who works at your company and they bring the stuff from home with them and they bring the stuff from work back to their home and they're the same person. And one of the things that exhausts people so much at work is the fact that they have to pretend to be two different people. Like I am this way at home and I am this way at work. And when we show up that way, it is exhausting. And I did that. I did that for a period of time and it was exhausting. And it was one of the things that led to my burnout. And, you know, I think organizations, the ideal thing that would happen is that they would recognize how this is well-being is a part of everything they do. I mean, it has the capacity to be part of how they train their leaders, which is something that, again, I'm often brought in to do is to help guide people through how can I be a leader who's more empathetic and compassionate and accountable for my own behavior? Like one of the main contributors to why people are not well is because their managers and their leaders are not self-aware, they're not self-regulated, and they're not taking care of themselves. And so how can they really truly, they're not doing their own work. So how can they really be there for other people in a meaningful and honest way? And everyone's just running around in like a state of fear and being, you know, dealing with their own trauma that they're bringing into work. And I think it's so important that we start at the top, that we start with leaders and make sure leaders are empowered with skills and tools to be more self-aware, to be more compassionate, to restore their own energy, to invest in their own self-care, to connect in meaningful ways. I think absolutely, Bruce, you can't pour from an empty cup. So leaders, I think too many organizations start with like, you know, this is this is an exaggeration, but like a water drinking challenge with their employees. That's not going to have it. That's like a waste of people's time. No offense, but like, it's a waste of people's time. Don't do that to people. Like really think about what would it look like here if everyone were thriving? Paint a vision first of what it would look like at your organization, right? If people were thriving, and then go from there and think, okay, well, what are the steps we need to take to get there? Not enough people are asking those questions.
Excellent, excellent. Those are exactly the types of questions that we need to ask of our leaders in all of our companies so that we have a better time at work. I mean, we spend so much time at work, don't we, Rachel? And, you know, for a person like me who works full time, and the two of you who are entrepreneurs, you work 24/7. But I work for a company, and I Mike was saying, I work a lot of hours,
Yeah.
and I do this on the side, and I have my own life. I have 5 kids. I have 6 cats. So there's a lot going on in my life. But we really need to bring this conversation with the leaders, and have them really, honestly and authentically address what it means to be human in an organization. So I thank you for that wonderful sharing. Mike, any next questions?
I'm so inspired by what you have shared, Rachel. I'm just wondering, right? Could you share with us an example or a story of the toughest human being that you had to work with to transform him or her? So, why, if you could share with us, why was that person so tough?
Mhm.
Obviously, because they have left a dent in you. You could recall that one particular person. Why were
Mhm.
they so tough, and how did you finally manage to break them and transform them? This is going out to all the stubborn ones out there. So yeah, could you share with us that one particular story?
Well, I'll share this because I don't really do individual coaching. I do more group, I do more
Right.
group
So we
training.
talk about group then, companies then.
Yeah,
Company
I
culture.
can think of it. I think of an example. So I do a lot of work in the professional services space. So I work with a lot of folks in the accounting space, for instance. I work accountants, engineers, attorneys, people that are like super analytical and super skeptical
Yeah.
and very left brained, like, to make a generalization. They all have hearts and like all that. I think it's not fair that we stereotype, but generally you get into these professions because you're a very analytical person and a bit cynical. Like there's just a slant towards cynicism, right? Because the nature of your work is very risk averse. You have to be super detail oriented. It's natural, right? It helps you do your job better to be
Yes.
skeptical, but it doesn't necessarily benefit you as a human being in relationships to be skeptical and cynical. And so I think of this one situation, two things happened that were really powerful in the same session. I was doing something with an accounting firm, a smaller firm, that there were about maybe 80 people that were at the event with us virtually. And it was about resetting mindset. And so I remember two things happened. One thing happened on the front end and one thing happened on the back end. On the front end, what happened was I invited them to, go into a small group conversation and talk about a way that they've adapted, things that we've all thought of in the past. You're like, what's the way you've adapted, at work or at home? And I had talked through prior to that, the grieving process and how there's these steps of, there's shock, and then there's denial, and there's frustration and anger and depression. And right. And these are not linear, because like they just hop around all over the place, right? They're not linear. And I mentioned that, and I was showing kind of a graph where there was a dot at each of these, places along the way. And there was, after they returned from their small group conversation, there was a person who raised her hand, because I invite folks to share, whatever came out of their whatever came out of their conversation with their small group. If anybody wants to share, they have the option to do that.
Right.
And so she came back and shared, she said, woman mid-50s probably, said, I'm at the green dot, and the green dot was depression. She acknowledged this in an accounting firm in front of like dozens of her peers.
Wow.
And I thought to myself in that moment, right, so much of speaking and training is improvising as well. You have to like be able to take a moment when you get it.
That's right.
And I took that moment and I was like, I just want to acknowledge the courage it took for her to share that. So first of all, I want to just acknowledge your courage in sharing where you are, because I'm certain that you're not the only one who is feeling that way right now.
That's right.
I'm sure you're not the only one who's feeling that way right now. And then the chat started flooding with messages from her coworkers that were like, we're here for you. Oh my goodness. Like, if you ever need anything, let me know. We've got you. Thank you for sharing that. And then before the end of the session, some of those people were messaging HR, and they were like, is there something we can do to make sure she's supported? So it was like this outpouring, of support and kindness and compassion from her colleagues, which I just thought was incredibly moving. And so they followed up with her afterwards to make sure she had certain resources she needed. So that was something that was really powerful of, the importance of getting people into conversation with each other. The second thing that happened was at the end of that session. This was my first time with this company as a collective. I'd met some of their, HR leaders, which is why I was brought in the first place. And at the end of the session, there was a guy, probably similar age, probably mid-50s. And I invited anyone who wanted to share any insights at the very end to share. And he raised his hand. And I'm sure some people would think this isn't totally appropriate, but he goes, so I got to be honest, coming into this, I thought that, you know, you were going to be kind of like this like hippy dippy yoga person, no offense. But that's not what this was at all. And I got a lot more out of this than I was expecting. So thank you.
Amazing.
And
Well done. Yeah. From a speaker to another speaker, well done.
Woohoo!
Give you a love right there.
Excellent.
Like that was a
Yes.
win, you know, like, so that
Yeah.
moment of like, I often know that people are thinking that of me. First of all, they think I'm 25, which I'm like, thank you, but I'm closer to 40. I take 37.
What? Wait,
I'm
what?
37 and I take very good care of myself. Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's a shocker.
That's wellness.
That's
There you go.
wellness.
That's
This
wellness.
is what happens when we do the things that we say, when we live out what we teach.
Amazing.
Lots of sleep, you know, lots of vegetables. And, you know, and so for me, that was a really powerful experience because people do expect that I'm going to come in and do a bunch of toxic positivity nonsense and tell them to just like buck up and like, you know, look at a motivational quote and feel better. And I like motivational quotes. Like I want to make sure they mean something, but you know, that's not what's going to help people get through a thing in their own reflection and their own awakening and their own epiphanies. That's the thing. And their ability to connect with and share with other people. Those are the things that are going to help them get through. And so for me, that was just a really validating experience. And to me, an example. And then I watched the whole screen. The cool thing is I was watching this screen. I had everyone's boxes in the grid mode. And so many people, as he was saying this, were nodding their heads. I was like, oh, you all thought that this was not going to be very good. You all thought that this was going to be just like a lip service or something. And, you know, yeah, exactly. Like Bruce said, meeting people where they are is so important. Like I didn't come in and try to discount what they were feeling. And I do a lot of pre-work when I come in and do events and trainings with companies. I survey them and I interview them and I get to know specifically what they're dealing with in their language. So then when I come on with their employees, they feel that sense of like, how does she know this stuff about us? I'm like, because I did my homework, you know?
Fantastic.
Yeah, that is fantastic because that really doing your homework is underrated, especially for people who speak, because people like Mike and me and you, sometimes we feel that we can just get up there and just say whatever, but that's definitely not the case. You need to do your homework. You need to know your stuff, especially when you're talking in front of a live audience that can call you out on it. So anyway, Rachel, at this point on our show, and you know nothing of this, we play a little game. And you don't know what the questions are, but the questions are this or that. So all it is a pair of statements, and you're going to tell us which one you would rather, because that will give us, the audience, a little insight into who you are. So,
Okay.
would you rather work from the office or from home?
Oh, from home.
Questions. Easy questions.
This is my office.
I know. Same with me. I'd rather
here.
Anyway. Would you rather do group work or solo work?
Group.
Yep.
Can I try the next one, Aziz?
Sure, go ahead.
Great. Would you rather watch Spider-Man or Iron Man?
Iron Man.
Okay.
I love Marvel. I love all the Marvel. We watch all the Marvel. We just watched the 10 Rings last week, and we watch Hawkeye, all the Marvel. We love Marvel.
But still, you love Iron Man more than Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There you go, Aziz. Back to you.
Didn't he die?
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
No, there's many different multiverses that.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Maybe there's one that he's
a multiverse thing now.
you never know. You never know. So, Rachel, sunrise or sunset? They're gorgeous. Is it because you're not awake during the sunrise? Come on.
Yeah. I'm a night owl, not a morning person.
All right. Maybe you have one final one, Mike. Go ahead.
Let me see. Would you rather visit an art museum or an archaeological museum?
Archaeological.
Oh, why?
History.
History, yeah,
Why?
why?
I feel like this makes me, I feel like always uncultured when I say this. I don't really like art museums. I like things that are more like interactive. So I feel like I don't like just staring. I don't like being a passive observer of things. I don't, my husband would laugh if he was in the background hearing you ask that question. He would be like, definitely not an art museum. Like, I guess if we're certain kinds of art, more structural, but like, I feel like an archaeological museum, like that would fascinate me more. That would intrigue me more. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
So probably
We're
a
the same.
science or a tech museum, or what do they call those? A tech interactive display would be a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
Where you can
We have them in
play around
Malaysia.
with
We
things.
call them the
Yeah, we
science
do.
centers.
Yeah, Science Center. We have Science Centers here too. We used to love going. Oh my gosh, growing up, we used to go. There's a Maryland Science Center in downtown Baltimore, and like I preferred going there to like even the aquarium. Like there was just so much fascinating stuff about how things worked. Like I've always liked understanding, you know, why are things the way they are, and how do things work, and it's cool to have your hands on things and figure that out. Yeah.
Nice.
Wow, can you believe that we have been chatting for 50 minutes and time just flies when you're having the fun?
Yeah.
So one of the big things that we saw in your profile and in your videos is singing. So how did that come about, and what's the history there? Rachel the singer.
Rachel the singer. Rachel has loved singing since she was 5 years old, but didn't really do it publicly, semi-comfortably until she was about 20. I, loved singing from the time I was very little. It was my outlet. I was very shy as a kid, believe it or not. I was very, very shy. I was reserved. I was guarded. I was not who was shown up here. I was not really comfortable in my own skin. I didn't feel safe around people socially, meaning I dealt with social rejection, and I didn't always feel included. I didn't feel like I fit in. And so I always had this like kind of guard up. And singing is a very vulnerable thing, very vulnerable, right? You're like sharing your soul, you know this. And so many things could go wrong. Your voice could crack, or you could go flat, or you could forget the lyrics, or any number of things could happen. Somebody could think you're not very good. And I was very much impacted by that way of thinking growing up. And so I wouldn't really sing in front of people publicly. I would sing by myself. I would lock myself in a room in my parents' house and put on these big headphones and sing along to tapes of like Mariah Carey, Desiree, Amy Grant, Celine Dion, eventually Shania Twain. That's when I started to get CDs, Ace of Base. I don't know.
These are all alien to me. I'm like a Linkin Park generation.
Oh yeah, I'm the Amy Grant generation, the 90s, and so I loved their music. For me, it was like the gospel, soul, slight country, pop,
country
like
twang,
that was kind of the vibe that I liked. And it wasn't until I was a senior in high school when I decided to take voice lessons. We had a choir. I went to all girls high school, went to a Catholic school, and we had this amazing choir. And then we had a smaller faction of the choir that was like this special singing group. And I loved singing, but you had to try out, you had to audition. And I was like, forget that. So I just never sang in a choral group in high school. And then I had the opportunity, a friend of mine who did sing, took voice lessons. There were private voice lessons offered at the school that you could sign up for. And I thought, well, let me just improve my voice for my audience of one, because I wasn't performing. So I was like, well, I'll just get better for myself. And she asked me at the end of the, one of our sessions, she was like, what are you going to sing at the end of the year recital? And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do that. And so she, eventually talked me into it. She's like, all my students do. So I picked Angel by Sarah McLachlan, which is like,
wow.
That's another one that I love, Sarah McLachlan. I mean, talk about a gut wrenching. I didn't even know what the lyrics meant when I was singing it at 17, but that's a heavy song. It was a heavy song about losing a friend to an overdose. And I was terrified. Renee, I feel your pain. I was terrified, and I did it, but I didn't enjoy it. And then it wasn't until I studied abroad in Spain, my junior year of college, and came back, and I was in gospel choir in college, which you did not have to try out for, which is why I was in it. And I saw how much fun they were having. They were so alive. Like I went to their concert, and there was like 80 people in these like golden green robes, and they were having the time of their life. They were dancing and clapping. And I was like, I want to how do I do that? Like, I want to do, didn't have to try out, came back from Spain, had this transformation that happened when I was there. First time leaving the country, living in another place. It's such a vibrant culture. I mean, Spain is, either of you been to Spain? Out of curiosity.
Not me.
We have not.
Oh, if you get a
Looking forward
chance,
to it.
the food is amazing. It's colorful. There's dancing, there's music. It's awesome. So I came back from that, had a new lease on life, found some courage, and tried out for a solo for the spring concert for gospel choir. And I got it. And that was the beginning of me starting to, put my hair. And
Wow.
and I everything that was in me. And that's how my husband and I connected, even through, we went to the same college.
Wow.
And we would sing by ourselves. He would play piano, I would sing a yellow folder of music. And then it wasn't 3 years ago that the idea of singing as part of my work when I was speaking training with a group called Public Speaking. It wasn't that the idea of singing into speaking was even a possibility.
For incorporating that into your speeches. That's amazing.
Never thought it. Never thought.
And you were recently paid to sing. You got your first professional singing gig. Congratulations. How did that go?
It was, oh my gosh, it was somebody from the program, right? So another fellow speaker runs a company, and she was like, a year ago, she's like, hey, I want you to sing some Christmas carols to our people. Like, we can't really do our typical year-end gathering, gather together or whatever in our own way. But would you sing to us? What would that cost? I don't know. She paid me like $500 in Lululemon gift cards. That's what I like Lululemon when you do. And I was like, I mean, thanks for like 15 minutes, and I got $100 worth of clothes. I was like, this is really
I'm
cool.
there. I'm there.
Oh, yeah.
So fantastic. That was just amazing sharing, Rachel. But we are at the end of our hour, and part of my job is trying to keep everything in check. So just to kind of wrap up, Rachel, could you summarize what we've been talking about, and maybe the key takeaways that you'd like our audience to keep with them from our conversation?
I want to say, check out the post I put up yesterday on LinkedIn asking for help. I think if I could have anyone take away anything from this, it's do not try to go through hard things alone. Ask for help. You're worthy of the help and support that you need. I would say, remind yourself of when you do your hard things and think about what strengths showed up in you in those moments that you could draw on right now. Give yourself permission to feel all the things you need to feel in the process of grieving. All of us are grieving the loss of something now. Every single person in the world right now is grieving the loss of something or someone. Yeah. And allow yourself to be sad, to be frustrated, angry, and make the decision, if you notice that you're in that spot for too long, make the decision to reach out for help, seek therapy, to connect with something that brings you joy, because joy is something that lifts us out of those deep, and think about what makes me feel alive. What are the things that make me feel alive and that bring joy? And is a 2-minute version of that I can do today? So those are, if I could think of some things to say, those are some things I would say in summary.
Amazing.
Wow.
Look at that.
Fantastic. Mike, you want to share anything?
I'm just very grateful to be here and to absorb your positivity. Rachel, I only have good things to say about you. I believe from an advocate of positivity, resilience, never giving up, of faith and hope, from one corner of the world, all of us here in Malaysia, to you all the way in the United States. Thank you for the work that you do, and I hope that we'll be in touch. And thank you again, Azib, for making this all happen for us, Azib. You're amazing.
Yeah, you're welcome. You want a little lighter?
Yes! That is what we were getting at to close off the show. A little performance from Rachel Druckenmiller. Everybody, let's put your hands together. Let's go.
This is the song. The first thing I sang there. So here we go. This is my voice. I'll do my best. So here, everyone, just to remember remember that even when it gets really dark in your life or in the world, that you have the capacity to be a light to somebody else, and even to be a light to yourself in those moments. So here we go. This light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine. Let your light shine.
Woohoo! There you go, everybody. Let your light shine. Everybody, put your hands together for Rachel Druckenmiller. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please connect to all of us. We're happy to have you on our show, and we must collaborate again. Rachel, you, me, Mike, all of us. Let's do something together. Let's sing a song together. We'll do something after this. So thanks, everyone, to all the audience members from my feed, Rachel's feed, Mike's feed, wherever you're tuning in from. Thank you so much. Please stay safe, and as always, stay
Azif,
kind.
shall we take a group picture together?
Yes, let's do this.
All right,
Go
big
ahead.
smile. I give you a big love right here. Big smile, Rachel. Azif, 3, 2, 1. Nice, fantastic. Thank you,
Goodbye,
everybody.
everyone. Take care.
Good
Stay
night.
safe.
Thanks,
Bye,
Rachel.
bye, bye. Clap, 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 clap.